Well, my father told me this story about a trip with a homemade trailer back in the early 20s. The trip was actually in the winter of 2021. He told my mother, why should we just play our good music? That meant Beethoven and Bach and so on. Why should we just play our good music for people in the cities, rich people? Why do we take our music out to the countryside? I guess there had been examples of this, the Chautauqua tours and so on, but his idea was just to build a trailer and they would head out into the country and see what people thought of their music. He spent a whole year building a beautiful, one of America's first automobile trailers. They didn't have plywood so much then. It was made of tongue and groove maple with brass screws, had 4 wheels and hoops and a canvas roof. It looked a little bit like a fancy covered wagon. And he bought a Model T Ford and had a special low gear put in it so they could pull it up hills. As it was, I think their average speed was 20 or 25 miles an hour. He had a 6x6 platform which could be pushed under the trailer while they were traveling, but when they stopped it could be pulled out and 2 jacks put under the outside corners, and there was a little stage for a folding organ, the kind chaplains used in World War I, and he would sit at the organ, and my mother would stand and play the violin. That was the plan. They headed south, I think stopped at a few suburban places, gained a little cash, but then they headed down into Virginia, into North Carolina. The roads got worse and worse. Roads were not paved in those days outside cities. The trailer had 4 solid rubber tires. You can bet it was bumpy when they went over the cobblestones in the cities or over badly rutted roads. Anyway, one very rainy day, the puddles got more and more until it seemed like the road was one big puddle. And my mother said, Charlie, don't you think you ought to turn around? He said, I can't turn the trailer around on this 1-lane road. And the map says the town is ahead, so we should go ahead and see if we can get to the town. Chug, chug, brrr, going on. If you've ever seen a Model T Ford, you know how small it was. It was quite tall, maybe 7 feet tall or so, or more. But the engine was a little bit bigger than a portable typewriter. A tiny little thing. And now the fields were filling up with water. As it looked like it was a real flood coming on. The water got over the tires. It came up to the hubcaps. And as my father told me the story, at age 4, around 1923, I was just enthralled with the excitement, what was going to happen. And my mother was getting hysterical. She says, Charlie, I can carry Peter. Can you carry the 2 boys? We're all going to get drowned. And he said, it can't get any deeper than this. I'm sure he was getting worried, though, especially when sheep were swimming in the fields. My mother says, how do you even know there's a road? He says, well, I can see the tops of the fence posts on either side, so I know there must be a road halfway between. And on they went, chug, chug, brrr, water getting deeper and deeper. Finally, they saw in the distance some trees through the driving rain, and sure enough, the water went down below the hubcaps, down below the tires, and finally they were on dry ground again. And that night they parked along the highway and camped. They had a little Coleman gas stove and cooked supper, went to sleep. In the morning, 6 farmers were around the trailer with guns. We don't want no gypsies round here. We're not gypsies, says my father in his Harvard accent. We're musicians. You're what? I suppose maybe they brought out my mother's violin and she might have played a little on it. My father said, actually, we're looking for a place we can spend the winter. The road's so bad I don't think we can get back north again. And one of the farmers says, well, I got a wood lot in back of my house. If you want to camp out there, you're welcome. So they spent the next 4 months or so in the Mackenzie's wood lot in Pinehurst, North Carolina. And I'd often wondered if the Mackenzie family was still there, but my travels never took me to Pinehurst. But 2 years ago, I'm singing in Chapel Hill, and two middle-aged women coming up and say, "Are you any relation to the Seeger family that spent the winter with the Mackenzies in 1920? I said, "Good Lord, are you from that family?" He said, "Yes. My grandmother never stopped talking about that family from New York that spent the winter with them."